So welcome to the Best is Surrey podcast. My name is Paul Deach.
And I'm Marissa Heath.
Now, what a great reaction to our pilot podcast. You know, we kind of had the idea to do it, not really knowing or having any high expectations or anything, but the reaction's been fantastic. I mean, I'm actually quite surprised at the reach that pilot episode
Yeah,
has had.
me too.
And the great reaction and feedback that we've had from people who have listened to it.
Mm.
And we've had quite a lot of people saying, oh, you know, I'd love to come on the podcast and contribute.
And so many topics, ideas put forward for things to discuss. I've had, numerous emails. It's been really surprising.
Yeah, just fantastic. So I'm really encouraged by that and really excited about it at the same time. Now, since we recorded that pilot episode, you and I have met several times to discuss how we think the format is going to go. And I'm just going to sort of explain that to listeners now. So each podcast, certainly for the beginning until we sort of develop it, you know, we might change it up a little bit, but we're going to have a set format each week, and that will be a national brief. So what happens nationally that affects us here in Surrey from a government point of view. We're going to have a local brief, so that's hot topics in Surrey, and we're in quite a useful position that we can have a look at social media and see what people are talking about and what the chatter is and that type of thing, and we'll base our local brief around that. And then we'll have a main item for discussion, which you're going to introduce in just a second before we get onto the national brief. And then we're going to have a Surrey discovery, and that is because you and I do get around the county quite a lot in our respective roles. We are quite well connected with businesses, community groups, voluntary organisations, charities, that type of thing, as well as stuff in our professional lives. So we do happen across a lot of stuff, and what we want to do is share that with our listeners and help promote the great things that go on in Surrey. And of course, we are, like I said, quite open to changing the format, but we really want to hear from our listeners. So if you've got any feedback, good or bad, if you like stuff, if you don't like stuff, we want to hear from you. And then, you know, we've got a great starting point now, but we're quite willing to change it. We're not rigid in our views from that point of view. So without further ado, Marissa, why don't you introduce our main item before we go into the national and local brief?
Great, thanks, Paul. Well, the main item today is dogs. And people are going to say, dogs, what about dogs? Well, it's about responsible dog ownership and the impact they have on Surrey. Last year, there was a really, really sad incident where a lady called Natasha Johnson died after being attacked. She was walking a large group of dogs. And we know that dog bites have gone up as well. So it's about lots of issues to do with dogs, not just bad things, really positive things as well, because dogs are great. I've got dogs. But also, as I'm doing a piece of work at Surrey on nature recovery and looking at how we increase biodiversity, it's about how dogs use our countryside, the impact they have on it. And there's actually a very large piece of work going on at a university at the moment measuring the impact on nature and biodiversity of dog walking. Also, dog poo, what a controversial issue, because people get very annoyed about dog poo being left.
Yeah.
Um, left on streets, pavements, where children are, parks, all of that kind of thing, where children are playing, but also near farms and farming livestock, which can have awful ramifications on the cattle grazing there, and also livestock worrying, where dogs chase sheep, for example, and cause them to abort or cause damage to cows grazing in fields. So lots of different things about dogs. We are going to be very positive about it, don't worry, even though I started by using a very, very sad and extreme case. But there are more dog walkers out there. There's many more dogs. I think we've got 12.5 million in the UK now. And a lot of them actually are in Surrey. People moved out of London, got themselves a dog, had a family, bought a nice home. And those dogs are now Surrey dogs. So we will be discussing all things dogs today. But first of all, we're going to touch on some national issues, I think, Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So, you know, Labour have been in government now for what? About a month
2 months.
also. Is it 2 months?
Yeah.
Seems like a lifetime. But anyway, so they've been in government for that amount of time. And I think the one thing that I'm hearing, certainly from people that I represent, but also the chatter on social media in Surrey, is the green belt and development. I think that's where people are really worried. And I have to say, I think Labour are going to struggle with this one because there are a lot of Labour MPs that live in rural constituencies. And so there's quite a lot of scope there for some sort of backbench rebellions. I mean, what are your views on it?
Well, they've got enough MPs, let's face it, they've got a huge majority, so they can risk that to an extent and send those MPs to do some work. But the big fear is that a lot of that housing is put into areas like Surrey that perhaps aren't Labour headed. They're either Liberal Democrat or Conservative MPs. And the question comes back to what resources are we going to go with this housing? We're already struggling with numbers. There's lots of areas that have very complex and difficult local plans, and now they're expected. I think your area is 125% increase, and you've already had tons of development.
Yeah.
And that almost links back to the dog issue I just said. All of those people come with their things, their cars, their dogs, they need the health services, all of this kind of thing. And yet we're not seeing anything come around that. And I think that's people's biggest fear.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I live in Deepcut and I represent Mitchett, Frimley Green and Deepcut at Surrey County Council. Um, and the thing is with Surrey Heath, apart from the fact that, we get uh, the similar housing targets to everyone else, we are landlocked in so much as we've got quite a large amount of triple SI and
Mhm.
SPA. So for anyone listening to this that doesn't know what that is, SPA, Special Protection Area, and triple SI is its Special Scientific Interests,
Yeah.
which have European levels of protection. They're never going to get built on because they're often rare habitats. So in Surrey Heath, we've got a lot of lowland heath. The world has lost 85% of its lowland heath habitat. A great deal of what is left is right here in Surrey Heath and in some other areas of Surrey. That will never get built on. So a lot of our land is made up of those designated land types, which means I would suggest and I would argue that our housing targets are unfair in Surrey Heath.
Mm.
Um, and I think in Deep Cut we have development right now of 1,200 houses being built on the former Princess Royal Barrack site, right next door to where I'm sat right now. Um, and the big issue is infrastructure. Now, to be fair, that particular development is getting a fair bit of infrastructure. So we've got a brand new school, we've got had highways improvements and all that type of thing. But the fact of the matter is that people still can't get GP appointments. They're struggling at the hospital. And what I call soft infrastructure, like school places, GP appointments, and all that type of thing.
Mm.
People are really struggling with, and I'm not hearing a thing coming out of the Labour government about how they will address that. Finally, I'm worried also about the quality of the houses because, in order to build that number of houses, I think there are going to have to be compromises, and I'm worried about the quality of those properties that they're going to build, whether it's flats, houses, whatever it may be. And I think that we're going to suffer from that
Yeah.
going forward with things like mould and all that
We
type of thing.
saw we saw some horrendous planning. Was it under the 70s Labour government? You
Yeah,
drive into London and places like that, and you go, that was 70s Labour.
yeah,
We don't want design and quality to go down at all. This is a bigger issue, and I think it's one that's worthy of its own podcast,
agree.
go into detail on. But we already know that it's incredibly difficult, and we're building on green belt already. So how far do we encroach into our green belt and and it will change the character of lots of rural villages. I'm not seeing enough of a fight back from a lot of people at the moment in the political circles. They've all got to stand up to this. The Lib Dem MPs, the Tory MPs,
All of
everyone
them.
protect this area.
No, I completely agree. And like you say, that is definitely worthy of its own podcast as a main item in the future. So we'll watch that. And the other thing on the national brief is winter fuel payments. Now, you and I both have a bit of experience with the impact that the cost of living crisis has had on some of our, struggling families and households in Surrey. As such, it was Surrey County Council that set up the Warm Hub. So why don't you tell people a little bit about that?
I mean, they were just basically spaces we utilised and welcomed everyone in. So it could have been libraries, community halls, that kind of thing. We made them warm, as in the
Yeah,
name. but we made sure there was coffee, working space, engagement with different groups that could give advice. And so, for example, I just found out today that we've been the leading county in insulating and putting green energy into vulnerable households, so they could come and get information about that at a warm hub. So a great idea, and also deals with loneliness, that kind of thing. But ultimately, people should be able to stay at home and be warm. And if they're on low incomes, they need support for that. So I think this has been done in a bit of a hurried approach. I know they're saying those who will really need support will get it, but having looked at the document, most people who are vulnerable and in need of help aren't going to be able to get over those barriers.
Yeah, and quite a lot of the people I'm talking to, who are literally on that kind of threshold, where they're going to lose the payment through
Mm.
the means testing and the criteria. Um, it's within a couple of quid,
Yeah, no, that's it.
and it's really going to have a big impact on a lot of people. Now, will we be continuing the warm hubs this
Yeah,
winter?
we'll continue the warm hub. So again, we'll go and do something and raise the warm hub issue on a separate podcast. Go and visit some people there and see how it works for them. Don't think of them as being kind of elderly day centres or something. Take
Yeah,
that concept away. It's for anyone of any age, and that's what the demographic we have using it is anyone of any age. If I'm at home and I don't want to put my heating on, I can go there and work. So
well,
people just need to sort of don't think of it as a municipal, really horrible place to go. They're not at all.
yeah.
We make them
Well,
really
well,
smart and
well,
really
actually, I went to one last winter because I have a client in Woking, and as you know, I cycle everywhere. And I decided on the way back, rather than sort of cycle all the way along the Basingstoke Canal home, I thought I'd stop at the Woking Library, which is a lovely library, by the way. I don't know if you've ever been there,
yeah.
but it's a phenomenal library. And it was buzzing in there. It was literally buzzing. There was loads of people working in there with their laptops, had really fast Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
like say tea, coffee, biscuits, and all that going. It was actually a really nice
Yeah.
vibe in there. So
Yeah. No,
I would use it just for socialising and somewhere to work.
yeah. And why not
Um,
save yourself whatever it costs in fuel in your home and just come out for the day? It's a different environment,
yeah,
take advantage of it.
absolutely. So that's our the two topics that we discuss on our national brief. Now gone to the local brief. Now we've had some terrible, terrible news in Staines, which we're not going to go into in any great detail because there's an active police investigation going on, but there's been a terrible tragedy involving the death of 3 children and their father in Staines. And I was talking to a county councillor from that area today when we were at Woodhatch in Reigate today, who said that she's had constituents calling her in tears. I mean, it's just a terrible, terrible tragedy, and I think really you and I both want to offer our condolences really
Yeah, to anyone
to
affected, the community,
anyone affected, whether it's
family.
family, friends, or members of the community who are just upset by the whole thing. It is really, really terrible.
It is, yeah, it is very terrible.
Okay, so that on the Staines tragedy, and then I think again on the local brief and related to the government again is the central government funding for local authorities.
Well,
You know,
I mean, everyone's already saying belt tightening time. We've done a lot of belt tightening. We've got increased pressures, adult social care in particular, the SEND stuff. The pressure is on to provide services, but it doesn't look like money will come our way. Now, I remember because I was elected when I was still at university in 2003 under a Labour government, and this isn't just a political pushback against them. This is the reality of what happened. Our money was cut, cut, cut in Surrey because they saw us as the wealthy county that didn't need anything. And we all know very well that there are parts of Surrey that are not wealthy. Were lots of normal people like us and things who need services. We need decent roads to keep our economy, our local economy going, etc. We need the right funding, but I'm very, very worried we won't be getting it and we'll be looking at further cuts, which is
well,
not going to be good.
well, absolutely. I mean, what a lot of residents are always surprised at when I tell them that's nearly 70%. I think the exact figure is 66% of all the budget that we have at Surrey County Council, raised from council tax, um, goes to adult social care and children's services.
I thought it was higher than that, but I'll take your word.
I was actually informed today by an
Okay,
officer.
fine. Okay,
It's the precise figure is 66%.
okay.
It was 70%. I think it's
Yeah,
gone down a
yeah,
tiny bit,
okay.
but nonetheless, that leaves just over 30%, 35%, or
Yeah.
34% to spend on everything else that this
The
council is
roads, the
responsible for.
infrastructure, yep. I mean, the environment stuff that I'm trying to do, net zero. Yeah, I mean,
And
it's
I think governments have looked at Surrey as, like you say, an affluent county, which it does have it does have its affluence, but it also has its pockets of extreme deprivation. You've only got to go to Trevor Hogg's division in the Oldham, Bernie Muir's division in Epsom. There's
I did
serious
it
deprivation in
in
this
Englefield
county.
Green, Scott, one of the highest deprived wards, Englefield Green West, an element of it. So I know it only too
I
well.
think I think every division has its pockets
Every
of it.
division has its pocket, and the concern here is that if they think we can just raise the money by increasing council tax or something, and I know some of the borough councils are sort of looking at what they can do around that. I think
Yeah,
people in Surrey pay enough. I'll be completely direct about
yeah.
this. I'm a council taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer broadly. We pay enough. We need something back, and I want to see decent roads and decent services. I want to know that our schools are good, broadly. All of those things are really important. Well, they can't keep rinsing us and just squeezing more money out of individual residents.
No, the other thing is as well is that Surrey County Council has been a very well run council in terms of finances. So the governments, including the Conservative government, unfairly look at us and think, oh well, they're all right.
Mm.
They've got healthy reserves and all that. Yeah, yeah. Surrey County Council has got healthy reserves, but that's not by mistake. It's through well managed finances through the cabinet members like David Lewis and so on, and Tim Oliver, the leader. Really good, well managed finances. But that money is there for a rainy day and when it's really, really needed, those reserves. And it's unfair, I think, that government withhold funding to our council because we're a well managed council.
Yeah. Well, we better get on to the main topic because, again,
Okay.
that's a whole other big issue about what local government needs to look like as well. I've got a huge amount of thoughts on that topic, but we will
Okay.
wait and see what the Labour government delivers us, and then perhaps have another discussion when the reality hits us and we know what it looks like. We might be pleasantly surprised, but I pretty much highly doubt it.
Okay.
So,
So
dogs. So
dogs.
I consider myself quite well qualified to talk about this. I'll tell you why. So first of all, as the cabinet member, I've led a piece of work on a dog walkers code of conduct, which we released this year to try and sort of get consistency around how people walk their dogs on our countryside and raise the issues more broadly. And secondly, because I led a sector group called the Canine and Feline Sector Group, and that comprised of lots of different organisations, Dogs Trust, RSPCA, Kennel Club, etc., etc., which then advises government on dog and cat health and welfare. So we've had these discussions at a national level as well. And the discussion is as such that, particularly after COVID, we've noticed a real spike of dogs that are out of control, that haven't been socialised, that people are getting breeds that perhaps aren't quite right for the household. Says she who rescued a Labrador about a month ago and is absolutely just like, I didn't know it grew so big and liked swamp so much. But anyway, story.
Yeah.
Um, so there's lots of issues coming out. Now, I've also done huge amounts of work to say to government, look at the benefits of dogs, allow dogs and cats to be kept in social housing, changed tenant rules, make sure that elderly people aren't separated from their pets, recognise the health benefits that having a dog has. I am an absolute supporter of pet ownership, dog and cat ownership. So I come to this with a really positive mind frame, but also recognizing the huge impact. And I mentioned that work earlier about the impact on our countryside. We've spoken about more residents coming to Surrey, more houses being built. This is going to increase. We
Mm.
need good dog ownership. And I think we need to ask the questions in this podcast. Are dog licenses a good idea? Is that something that would help us get better dog ownership, or is everything fine? Dog poo, what are the kind of things we could tackle around improving that situation? Everyone moans about dog poo bags swinging on branches, don't they?
Oh, it drives me mad. Yeah. Okay. Well, so although I don't own a dog, I also know quite a bit about dogs. I grew up with them in our family. We always had dogs when we were growing up. All my brothers have dogs or cats or and just about all members of my family. And my uncle, no longer with us, my late uncle, my dad's brother, was a kennel club judge. And breed, he bred blue roan cocker spaniels. So I've been around dogs all my life, and I absolutely love them. But the fact of the matter is, being rather selfish,
Yeah.
if you can't teach it to wipe its own backside, I'm not interested, and I just don't have the time, to be
They are
honest
a
with you.
lot. They are a huge commitment, and I do
There
feel
are a huge
bad
commitment,
realising.
and
Yeah.
and I would urge any listener to this to look up Marisa Heath's Instagram and have a look at a recent picture she published of her dog that then I think had been in a
It was
swamp.
raining. No, it was raining, and it went out. She went outside and dug a massive hole. So not only did she get covered in mud and leave a beautiful hole in my lawn, she then came in without me realizing and lay on all the furniture and walked around the whole house. So it was
It was.
fierce. Really.
It's so funny, so funny. But my favourite dog at the moment is your Kenny, that your Manchester Terrier.
Well,
What a
Kenny,
gorgeous dog!
Kenny is ancient. He's heading towards the probably, I'm sad to say, end of life. But the thing is with Kenny is he's highly neurotic. So I'm someone who knows about dogs, and I've had dog behaviourists, dogs trainers, but he was badly treated when he was
Yeah,
little, and he's not got over that. So just to show
right.
the commitment of dogs, since very sadly my mother passed away, I can't put this dog with a stranger. I can't put it in a home boarding situation. I can't put it in a commercial situation. I am like landlocked to the UK without holidays because of this dog.
Yeah,
Okay, because I need to look after him until he's ready to go. So dogs are a massive
they
commitment.
are.
I'm constantly out at work thinking I've got to get back for the dog. You know, and if you want a professional dog walker or sitter and things, they're not cheap. It's like 40 quid a day or something.
Oh no, it's mega money.
Um,
So on responsible dog ownership then. Since COVID, and because also I am out and about a lot on my bike in the countryside and on popular dog walking routes, I see the best and the worst examples of dogs um, under control or not, as the case may be. I'm pleased to say, though, that the vast majority of dogs that I encounter on my rides along the Basingstoke Canal or wherever it may be, cycling across Barossa Common or the Surrey Hills, the vast majority of dogs are very well trained, under control,
okay,
and no problem to anyone, in my experience.
okay.
However, there's also quite a large number of dogs that are not under control. And one example is I was going down a cycle track
Mhm.
from Deepcut to Tomlinscote School. There's a new cycle path that's been installed there. And this dog was chasing after me, trying to bite me as I'm cycling down this.
Shouldn't laugh. Sorry, it's not funny, but yeah, it's really
Well,
serious if you were scared of
it
dogs.
was. It's funny now, but it
Yeah,
wasn't at the
no, no,
time,
sure.
right? Because luckily I'm an experienced cyclist and I could handle it. I could have easily though been an inexperienced cyclist and fell off my bike. Um,
That, or you could have been on a horse and then you'd have been in serious trouble. Yeah,
well, it is a bridle way as well.
yeah,
Now the thing was is I spoke to the owner and she said, "Oh, the dog doesn't like people dressed in black for some reason." I'm ever so sorry. That's your problem,
yeah,
not mine,
yeah.
right? That dog is not under control, right? You need to put it, if you know that that is the case, and there's a chance that somebody dressed in black might encounter your dog, it should be on a lead if that's the way it reacts,
Sure.
right? Um, she didn't get it, but so there is a big issue around dogs under control, and
Mm.
as you alluded to earlier about the dog fouling, which I do have a solution to.
Okay, go on.
Well, so I, as part of my professional job, have calls to go out to Spain quite a lot.
Mhm.
Okay. And one of my clients, who is in Malaga, was explaining to me that they had a massive dog fouling problem
Yeah.
in Malaga city centre.
Mm.
And what they did, because they're autonomous councils, so they call them municipalities in Spain, their councils have really strong local powers, and they brought in a dog registration scheme
Okay.
whereby every single dog by law was compelled, their owners were compelled to get them DNA registered.
Yeah, I've heard about this, and we can do that here as well. I mean, we've got the DNA kits. People have approached us at the Canine and Feline Sector Group to talk about this. We've got microchipping, which sets the basis of that already because it's legal, it's law that your dog must be microchipped and you need to update those microchip details. Unfortunately, it's not being enforced, so a lot of people aren't updating the microchip details, and that's making it hard to tag the dog to the owner. But basically, what does this mean? That people go around with little DNA, you've got to send council officers out with little DNA sticks testing dogs.
Well, I mean, in Spain, they for some reason, countries like that are far more compliant with these things than we are
Yeah.
here in the UK.
Well,
And
but it's also the fear thing. So if one person got caught and fined 1,000 quid or something, I'm not saying you should. I'm just throwing that out there. Everyone would hear wind of that and kind of go, "Oh my God, I'll pick
well,
up."
yeah, quite right. And in
Yeah,
Malaga, right? I mean, I looked into this when I found because I was fascinated by it. When I looked into it, they don't, they don't have members of staff of the council whose job it is to go out swab testing every bit of dog shit in the city of Malaga. But what they do is have purges every now and again,
yeah,
and they'll randomly test, and then but word soon gets out and the fines are heavy.
yeah,
Now, that is pretty draconian. I've got to admit,
yeah,
but I think would be the answer to responsible dog ownership, and it overnight would stop these issues of these idiots who. I
yeah.
would suggest these bags that are hung up on the
Oh God,
branches of
don't.
trees. It's actually their owners' brains that are in those
Yeah.
in
I
those
mean, some
bags,
people say the reason they've done that is they don't want to carry the poo around on the whole walk and
and
they're
then
going to
forget
way
to
back and
pick
they
it up on
forget.
the way back.
That might be true for some, sure, but you just don't, you shouldn't forget basically. Just make sure
There's
you're
just so excuse me.
ridiculous.
There's just so much of it, and I don't buy that. Like you say, it might be one or two people, but what I don't understand is why would you go to the trouble of picking it up in the first place? You might as well just leave it
And
if
then
you're going to
collect it
do
on the
that.
way home. Yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah, it's a tricky one, and the reason why this is important because people will understand. Well, the majority of people understand if your dog poos on a pavement or something, you need to pick that up. Okay, we're not as bad as say France, where you're sort of dodging it left, right, and centre in some areas. But they do think if you're on the countryside, what does it matter? And the reason it matters is because it can pass a disease, and the name's just flown out of my head when I most need it. It
Yeah,
passes
I
a
know the
disease
one you're on about.
cows. I'll remember
Yeah.
it in a minute. It will come to my head in a minute, and that can lead to severe complications for farmers. So that's why it's important to clear up poo on common land because of the potential of disease spread there.
Mm.
But we have a responsibility, I suppose, as councils to make sure people can dispose of these things. We can't put litter bins across all of the common land, and there'd be a load of people who'd get very annoyed if we did. We are trying to put dog poo bins in better locations. We did a couple up near Norbury Park not too long ago, and they need to be emptied regularly. But yeah, it's really tricky. We've got so many dogs, and that's what they do.
Well,
So
like I say, with responsible dog ownership comes, a huge amount of responsibility, and I think that the time has come actually that we compel people to have that responsibility. That's my personal view. I
okay,
know
so
it won't be popular.
So going on from that then, dog licenses. So years and years ago, I think again in the 70s,
Yeah,
especially, they introduced dog licenses and people really didn't like them. They went mad. Now, I've explored the dog license concept. I said, if you ring fence the money, if you charge people a license fee, £5 a year, let's make it really low because it isn't necessarily about making money. It's about getting people to register their dog, to do the DNA thing or whatever, to make sure the microchip's up to date. So local authorities know how many dogs are in their area in the first place. That gives us all the data and stats we need. And then you ring fence the money and said, okay, we will take your dog license money and we will put it into dog welfare or something. We won't just put it into the big treasury accounts again where the money just goes wherever and none of us have any sort of sign of it. I thought that might be a concept that would make people more open to dog licenses. I think it would be really interesting to do a survey, and maybe we should follow up with this at another point and ask people listening what they think, or maybe they
yeah,
could come back in some way to tell us what they think about dog licenses. But
yeah.
government have always have been very scared. Every time we've presented it to them, they're just like, oh, the public will hate it. It will be so unpopular. It's a vote loser. What do you think?
No, I think it's the time has come for it. There's just that many dogs about, but also I think not just about the registration of dogs,
Mm.
but also about because the responsible dog ownership is about being able to recall them and being and understanding how to train them properly. And I think there may be some scope. So bear with me here while I explain this. But I'm a professional as part of my day job
Yeah.
in media and content creation and all that sort of stuff. I have a professional drone qualification,
Hmm.
right? Now, at the very bottom level of drone operators, so if you're a hobbyist, you
Yeah.
can do an online course, and it's actually in the UK you've got to do this. You've got to register your drone, and
Okay.
you've got to do this online course. Mine's a little bit more advanced than this, but yeah, at the very basic level, they have to do an online course just to show that you understand your responsibilities as a drone pilot.
Mhm.
There's no reason why you couldn't apply the same to dog ownership, where when you buy a dog and you have it registered,
Yeah,
part of that process is you've got to do an online course,
yeah,
really, so that you demonstrate your capacity in understanding what your responsibilities are. I mean,
yeah.
what would you think to that?
Well, I think that yes, and I also think that if you got people to think about this before they got the dog, it might change the kind of dog they've met. Because I can't tell you how many people buy a dog that needs. I mean, Miss Opal, the Labrador, she needs like 3 hours exercise a day. If you don't think I'm already ridiculously busy to keep finding time to fly out with the dog, honestly, but I know I have to do it because otherwise she will fly around the
Well,
house like a
you got
whirlwind.
to
Yeah.
understand what breeds
You need to
evolve.
get
So
the right dog. Yeah.
Springer Spaniels that have just got endless amounts of energy, and you got to run them ragged
Yep.
every day.
So you need to get the right dog. Is it safe with your children? Is it the right dog? Let's try and tackle the dog bite thing when we're talking about it as well. If you get a dog that isn't happy with children, a Labrador is amazing. Petra can do, I'm not condoning this, but kids do what they do, and Petra will be trying to dress Opal up and all of this kind of stuff. And she takes it. Other dogs wouldn't, and that's when dog bites happen. Children get scared. You've got a problem then for life and things. So
Yeah.
you need to get the right dog. You also need to understand the huge cost to dogs. We've never had more abandoned dogs than the last year going into the welfares. They are packed into the welfare centres. They are packed at the moment because everyone got a dog during COVID and
Mm.
then went back to work, didn't realise how expensive it was to get a dog sitter, all of that kind of stuff. Veterinary bills are astronomical. Dog food, a dog like Opal is eating, I kid you not, probably a couple of £100 worth of food a month now.
Yeah.
Dog food isn't cheap. Insurance. These are expensive animals that are there for 14, 15, 16 years, and getting people to do some sort of online thing might just trigger something to make them think about that. So no, I think it's probably a good idea. And I don't like bureaucracy. I'm
Yeah.
into putting things on people and pinning them down and trying to control them, but I think something like that could work. Yeah.
Well, I know how my brother and his wife are with their two dogs. I
Mm.
go and stay there regularly. They're the most gorgeous dogs, right? Really well behaved and all that. But they are like having kids. They really are. In fact, in some respects, they
No, they are.
require more attention than kids.
I can take Petra on a plane and I can drop her off at someone's house and things. I can't do that with Miss Opal.
No, no chance. So there's a lot to think about there with responsible dog ownership and some of the regulations that we think maybe it's time to come forward.
Well, I think it is. I mean, I'll be interested to hear viewers' thoughts on this. Just highlighting again that we've done the code of conduct, so people should have a look at that. And the
Yeah,
only other thing I'd flag is the work we're doing around countryside code and trying to get that on people's agenda. If you just use common sense, which is the countryside code in my view, you don't let your dog run at someone else's dog on a lead. You don't let your dog run at someone who looks a bit scared of dogs who's on a bike. When you see livestock, you put your dog on a lead because you don't want it to chase it. All of these basic things that we need Surrey walkers to talk about, because the risk is if we don't do this, landowners and different organisations will say we don't want dogs here anymore, and they'll start to control it, and that will be detrimental to all the benefits that dogs bring from that health, that fitness, that companionship. If we start finding there's nowhere to walk them and we're pushing them into smaller and smaller areas, the Crown Estate, for example, has already said they want dog walkers to be licensed and to pay a pretty decent sum to do it. So that sort of pushes dog walkers somewhere. Some local authorities have said no dogs in these parks anymore, it's children only and things. So we need to do this for the benefit of dog ownership in Surrey and get this right,
right.
and really get the balance to it.
Okay, well, it's something that we'll come back to, hopefully in the near future, and maybe we might want to invite on, a local dog trainer or someone like that to, to give perhaps a different perspective. So, okay, well that's great. So that's our main item on responsible dog ownership. Now to the next segment, which is Surrey Discovery. So, Marissa, what have you discovered in Surrey that you want to share with everybody?
Well, the beauty of having a dog is you go out for walks. So I mean, I go all over the Surrey countryside in the environment role, but most recently I've been on Chobham Common, which is the most beautiful expanses of purple heather on at the moment. Very photogenic, looks beautiful. There may well be adders in there, so I'd say don't let your dogs run through it, but it looks really beautiful. So if anyone's got any time, I'd go out, have a look at that. I mentioned it in a video I did. There's a great pub called the Brickmakers
Yeah.
attached to it, which is really worth a Sunday roast. So somewhere for you to go at the weekend.
Right, okay. And I want. Oh, sorry. Wasn't there another one you had on?
Oh, I was just telling you, it's because I was just telling you about how thrilled I was that Longcross Road had been resurfaced. So I use that road a lot, as I said, sometimes coming up for meetings your way and things. It's off the M25 near St. Peter's Hospital. It's been
Yeah,
a nightmare road and they've resurfaced it. It's glorious, absolutely glorious. And you know, they're planning to resurface 100 miles of Surrey roads. And every time I hit one of these surfaced roads, I'm in my element. It's
yeah.
joyful.
And I have to say, hand on heart, although I still get complaints, don't get me wrong, about highways, things must be getting better because I'm
I think
getting
they are.
way less than what I used to.
Yeah, yeah,
Way less.
yeah.
So the highways team are doing some good work
Well,
getting these
they
roads
did
resurfaced.
the
And
most amazing job going through Dorking where they had the oil spill and they
oh,
repaired
that's
it
right.
in a
Yeah.
week. The road now is like silk.
Lovely. Well, let's hope the utility companies don't come and dig it up. But
Yes.
okay, well, I've got a couple. So the first one, everyone knows how much I love the Basingstoke Canal, and any opportunity I have to, to promote it and get people down there and check it out if you've never been before. And I'm in the middle of creating a video of the transition from summer into autumn on the Basingstoke Canal, because actually the summer's a beautiful time. The light down there with the trees and the light coming through the trees is just spectacular. But it's also spectacular at autumn with the leaves falling into the canal, and oh, it's just amazing. But related to the Basingstoke Canal is that I use the canal to cycle to a client meeting that I have every week in Woking. And on the way back, my favourite pit stop is Bozzy's fruit and veg stall in Woking Town Centre at Market Walk, right
Yeah,
by Superdry there. And why I love it so much is, well, for two reasons. One, they have a massive selection of fruit and veg at a very reasonable price.
yeah,
Yeah. But also, it's so fresh because, of course, Woking has a very large Asian community who love their fresh fruit and vegetables because they make everything fresh,
yeah,
all their wonderful curries and all that sort of stuff.
yeah.
So it's always dead fresh. And um, whenever I'm in Woking, I always make sure that I've got my pannier bags on the side of
They had to
my
carry it home.
yeah, and I always buy Izzy. She loves the grapes from there. I always buy tons of avocados. Right now, my favourite thing is potato and fennel salad, so I'll buy the fennel and potatoes from there. And I absolutely love it. So
Um,
if you're ever in Woking, Market Walk, just by Superdry, right in the town
yeah.
centre.
No, I know
Have
the
a,
one, and you've made me hungry now, and I think we're definitely going to have to do a podcast on best places to eat in Surrey, a whole podcast.
oh well, yeah. I think people will be here all night because I've got loads that I could
Brilliant.
contribute to
Oh, go
that.
on.
So that is our first episode in the bag of the Bestie Surrey. So I think just to close, if you're listening to this and you've got any ideas for future podcasts that you would like us to cover in our main items or any other ideas, we want to hear from you.
Indeed.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we'll see
Listening.
you next time.
Bye.